get your opinion, guys, on the stabbing at the Notting Hill Carnival. Just to repeat, if you're joining us, there has been another stabbing at the Notting Hill Carnival, taking it now, I believe, to 4 in total. And we just learned that there was a cache of weapons. 41 weapons today have been seized, including 2 firearms. So officers have now made 145 arrests as of 9 o'clock on this evening. Matthew, an astonishing situation, very, very concerning. A lot of people very critical of the Notting Hill Festival in terms of how it seems to be descending into lawlessness. Yesterday was a family day. Today was the day when they expected trouble. This is an enormous cache of weapons that has been seized. What's your thoughts?
I think, first of all, your thoughts have got to be with the individuals that have been stabbed, and I hope that they are okay and that we don't have tragedies, marring this weekend. I think there's always a lot of emphasis, and this debate seems to come around every year with the Notting Hill Carnival, not in the same way that we see with events like Glastonbury, Reading and Leeds.
We don't get 4 stabbings at Glastonbury. We don't get 41 weapons seized at Glastonbury. Is that a false equivalence?
No, because actually, if you look, Glastonbury was it Glastonbury and Creamfields? Creamfields has 23 arrests per 10,000 people.
But arrests for what type of crime?
It's not just
ticket touts and drug possession. This is severe criminality and firearms. You don't get firearms at Glastonbury.
You'd be surprised. I had a look earlier before. There was weapons seized at Glastonbury. There was fraud arrests at Glastonbury. There was sexual assaults. You have Reading and Leeds last year. There was 110 sexual assaults with only 14 arrests. This stuff happens, and I think this is the problem. You've got 1 million people there, right? Idiots are in all sorts of different crowds. I think it's wrong to tar people with similar brushes. And actually, the worst thing about this is the sadness that this is happening, because the whole reason the Notting Hill Carnival was set up was because of the racist murder of Kelso Cochrane in the 1958, and you had the 50s race riots, and West London had a particular reputation, and the community wanted to come together to try and celebrate that area of West London.
Well, that's not happening now, is it?
No, and that's my point. It's sad that the whole reason it was set up was to promote essentially community cohesion, and we live in very divided times at the moment. We've seen that on our screens the last few weeks. What you do about it, I don't know. I think, do we check people going in? Do we have metal detectors there? Should it be like any other sort of gig or festival or whatever else? I'm not sure, but I think it certainly isn't a false equivalence when you have the same arrest rate at Glastonbury as you do at the Notting Hill Carnival. And I think, and it's the same with Royal Ascot. You see videos of Royal Ascot every year, people kicking 2 shades of whatever out of each other.
Yeah, but do they seize firearms? I mean, I appreciate what you're trying to say. You're trying to make the well-worn point that people pick on Notting Hill because it's a black festival. And so the numbers of arrests come out.
Just that,
that's the general moot point. Trev, can I bring you in here? Because 2 arrests, we're just learning here as well. One of the arrests was a gentleman wanted for attempted murder in Hackney in July, who was spotted at the carnival and arrested following a successful stop. The firearm was seized at an entry point to the carnival, and that includes a firearm being stopped there. So stop and searching working. The spotting of individuals for previous crimes working, 41 weapons seized, 4 stabbings, 145 arrests. I was speaking to Mike Neville earlier on, who's a former Scotland Yard copper who worked for many years on the Notting Hill Carnival, and he was simply saying that this is an accident waiting to happen. He believes that 2-tier policing is happening at Notting Hill. The policing isn't tough enough. And it's only when they're stepping in to stop disasters like this that we're seeing the arrests. He believes that if we had robust policing like you see at a football match at Notting Hill, actually the arrests would be many, many more times than this, up to 1,000, he said.
Yes, and I don't think this is an accident waiting to happen. This was predictable and predicted. And the police are on the record today of saying they're sick and tired of this having to police the crime aspect of Notting Hill every year. There have been suggestions about ways to deal with it, having it in, say, an area that's in one section instead of the streets of London. It's in a park. Metal detectors seem to me a no-brainer. And I think that these could be sprung on the public as they come in and leave, so that people aren't expecting to go through a metal detector. And I think we might find a great deal more of these knives and weapons than that 40-odd that you've mentioned already. And I think equivalents with Reading and Glastonbury simply don't wash. OK, there are instances, and I've read Brendan O'Neill's item in The Spectator only a few minutes ago, saying that there have been sexual assaults, violence and other things. But this is really on a major scale when you're 2 stabbings in one concert or one festival, and all of the other evidence of drugs and arrests and weapons. This is something that is long overdue for proper police action.
OK, Trevor and Matthew, we'll pick up that debate again later in the show. Now, coming up, multiple stabbings and dozens of arrests. Is the Notting Hill Carnival now simply too dangerous? Welcome back to GBN tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, in a shocking statement, the Metropolitan Police have admitted that the Notting Hill Carnival is seen as an opportunity to commit crime, and this comes as around 7,000 officers were deployed over the weekend. Now, just a few minutes ago, I broke some news for you. Let's just go through that now. Let's go through the information so you're fully up to date. So we have 2 interventions by police throughout the day, which led to 2 firearms being seized. The first one was a stop and search of a car in Harrow, believed to be en route to the carnival, where a firearm was seized and 2 people were arrested. Later in the afternoon, officers carried out a search at one of the entry points to the carnival, seizing a further firearm. So that's 2 firearms seized, one at and one on the way to the festival. A man was arrested for attempted murder in Hackney in July, was also spotted at the carnival. So previous crime, a wanted man for attempted murder. He was picked up after a successful stop at the carnival. We've learned as well in the last half an hour there's been another stabbing at the carnival. And on top of those 2 firearms that have been seized, so far today, 41 weapons other than firearms have been seized. So we're assuming that means knives and other weapons on top of 2 firearms. That's 43 weapons seized in total. And the arrest figure, the arrest tally, is now 145 arrests as of 7 p.m. Monday. So that's like 40 minutes ago. 145 arrests, bringing the total so far over the 2 days to 249 arrests. And that includes 16 assaults on emergency workers, 40 possessions of an offensive weapon, 4 sexual offences, and a whole raft of other charges. Let's get some reaction now from my panel. Trevor Kavanagh, eye-opening and astonishing and very, very concerning figures there.
Yes, but not a total surprise. I mean, this has been the sort of simmering process each year now for the last several years. And it is alarming to know, and I've spoken to people who are ordinary, normal citizens who are afraid to come into London these days, not just because of the Notting Hill Carnival, but because they fear stabbings, assaults, attacks, the sort of things that are now more or less daily occurrences. I mean, stabbings, it wouldn't have been Notting Hill if you hadn't had a stabbing, in a sense. And that's a terrible thing to have to say. London is now a knife crime city and also a gun crime city. So it's a dangerous place to live and to come and visit. And I think that's an indictment of all governments, all authorities and the police. And despite the fact that the police did very, very well on this occasion, this is a matter of just holding the situation. They are not preempting it. They are not stopping the violence before it begins.
And Matthew Talbot, fair credit there to the police. It seems intel-led arrests to spot a known and wanted perpetrator or attempted murderer from a previous crime in Hackney in July at the carnival. That'd be like a super spotter, an intel-led arrest. So hats off to the police there. And the fact an arrest was made on the way to the carnival in a car suggests that this individual was perhaps known and being monitored, and also the effectiveness of entry point searches into the carnival, and that precipitated a firearm. So when the police are getting effective, it's having results.
Yeah, and I mean, I've not been to Notting Hill Carnival for about 15 years now, so I'm not sure how it is policed now compared to then. But I think one useful thing, credit to the police who may well have saved a life for all we know, but I think I would hope you'd have entry points at all different parts of the roads and whatever else. And that for me is the most surest way of ensuring that things don't get into the sort of carnival that shouldn't be there.
I don't think that's physically possible. It's an open street. It's a street. It's a neighbourhood. It's not a controlled environment as we would expect at a festival or a park. And to your earlier point, Trevor, is that perhaps the inexorable, grim future of events like this. If you cannot contain the individuals there, if you cannot contain the flow inwards of wanted murderers, attempted murderers, known criminals with weapons, even including firearms, is the only solution to somehow fence this off and have those entry points to stop this happening in the first place.
Well, I do think, yes, that it's got to be in an area that can be policed rather than spreading out through the streets of a suburb of London. And while we are praising the police, after all, that is what they're supposed to be doing. And they've got the sort of facial recognition, or at least the technology necessary to do exactly what we're talking about. But I think that there need to be metal detectors placed all over the place on an impromptu basis so that people cannot see ahead that they're going to be stopped or searched by mechanical devices. It needs to be the sort of thing that people are caught red-handed before they get to the point of actually using those weapons. At the moment, it seems to be reacting to events rather than stopping them happening. And that's the point at which we need to change our policy on these sort of events.
And Matthew Talbot, there will be inevitable cries now to stop this event happening in future years. There'll be inevitable pushback from the community, from politicians. Sadiq Khan is very, very supportive of this event as a celebration of cultural diversity, of the heritage of the black community, particularly the Windrush community. But the crime figures do seem to be particularly blighting. And when we have firearms like this, it's a different league to getting nicked for ticket touting or drugs.
No, I agree. I think it's a shame because it ruins it for other people. My friends that have gone today will go and have a nice time, enjoy themselves and come home and not be any mither. I think there is historical precedent for having the carnival elsewhere. I think when it was first launched in 1958, they actually held it indoors at King's Cross, and even the BBC showed it. It was a sort of a thing that brought people together. Whether that would work now, I don't know. What the feeling would be, I don't know. And I would say, and this is not to ignore the issues, I want to be clear that you can do two things at once, that there does seem to be a particular focus on things like the Notting Hill Carnival. I wouldn't say necessarily it is because of race. I think there's a class element. I think we ignore things like festivals where sexual assaults happen, where violence happens, where people are arrested with knives, and maybe not weapons, but certainly knives and other things, and people die, and people take drugs and do these illegal things. But we get the shame shots of the Grand National, of Ascot, of, women with tags on and stuff like that. And it seems to be a class as well as a race thing at times where we focus in on this one particular thing. And I think, therefore, when it has the same arrest rate as festivals, or actually some festivals have far worse arrest rates, that for me is therefore a bit of a blind spot.
Maybe that's because people don't take guns or knives into, like, the last night of the proms. Or the opera.
No, but that's not
what cricket.
But that isn't what I'm trying to equivalate it to. It's things like Creamfields. I've been to Creamfields, and I was at a festival 3 weeks ago. People sneaking drugs, people sneaking all sorts of things. People fight, and actually, it's interesting that we see festivals as a controlled environment. A lot of these festivals that I've been to have private security. It's not police. So actually, I worry about who they're accountable for, because actually they can be just as badly behaved as some of the revellers in some cases.
OK, Matthew Talbot, Trevor Kavanagh, thank you very much.